Of course, we'll do our very best. Now, as much as I'm happy to be here, I'm very sorry to be here because I'm only here because the person who gets this lifetime membership, honorary lifetime membership from the Strathclyde Students, University of Strathclyde Students Association, cannot come and fetch it himself. You know, so this makes me a bit sorry about the whole issue. He's been in prison for, it was mentioned, more than 16 years now. And he's not only in prison, he has been sentenced to death. So before the death penalty was lifted once and for all, I hope in Turkey, he has lived in the uncertainty whether he would be executed or not. So he spent literally several years on death row. He has been the only prisoner on the prison island of Imrale for more than 10 years. Like the only person in the whole prison, and even the guardians were not allowed to speak with him. You know, so he was deprived of all human communication. He has touched nobody for 11 years. It's an unimaginable situation. They even removed all kinds of plants from the area where he would, for 1 hour a day, could go outside. They even removed grass and you know, herbs from there, so he could touch no living being. So that were the conditions before the actual talks with the government started, but he's still like under isolation conditions in that prison. So this is the situation, this is the sorry reason why I have to be here and take this reward instead, and of course we'll do our very best to, you know, get it to him. It has been mentioned the first person unto whom such honorary life membership was bestowed was Nelson Mandela in '84. At that time, Mandela had been in prison for more than 20 years already, and he was considered a terrorist by many governments, including the UK government at the time, for waging an armed struggle against oppression, which seemed the only way to go at the time when he did it, like in the late 50s, early 60s. They tried everything. ANC became illegalized after having been legal for a long time, and they saw it as the only way out. Ocalan and his comrades, they founded the PKK, the Kurdistan Workers' Party, in '78, and the group later led the armed resistance against the military regime, which took power after another coup, the coup in '71, as we mentioned. There was another much bloodier coup in 1980, and after that it was the PKK who led the armed resistance against that from '84 on. But Ocalan was always much more than just a guerrilla leader. He was a politician, first of all. He was a researcher and a political writer and philosopher, basically. And it's more about these things that I'm going to talk about. We recently made another count. We're still not sure how many books have been actually published with his writing and speeches, but it must be more than 60 for sure. Books by Ocalan that he has authored, 12 of which he has written actually in prison, and it was these books that he has written in prison that had a major impact on the transformation of Kurdish politics. People have seen the movement and the war in the 90s, know that the guerrilla fighting was very central to all the activities. There were, of course, all kinds of cultural and political activities, but guerrilla warfare was very central. They had a strategy of, you know, protracted long People's War. They had the Vietnam War as an example of a national liberation movement who was able to push out to win against two colonialist powers, first the French and then the US. So that was the big role model, the big example for the Kurdish liberation struggle. But it has evolved away from that. It has become clear very early on that a military victory wouldn't be possible for either side, actually, neither for the Turkish army nor for the guerrilla forces. So Ocalan has been trying to find ways out of it. Yes, from '92 on, he has written extensively on political solution to overcome the guerrilla warfare. And after '99, after his after his arrest and death sentence, when he started writing the prison writings, he has argued intensively for putting the political struggle first. like to push back all kinds of military activities into the second rank, second line, and increasingly go away from all kinds of active activities like attacks, and transform the whole guerrilla that was in place into a defense force for self-defense. And this was this is the strategy that has been implemented ever since, and this was part of how Kurdish fighters were able to defend the city like Kobani, and not become mainly known through offensive action. Maybe it has been mentioned, the best example for what Öcalan stands for today is the revolution in Rojava, the northernmost part of Syria. It's often said it's like the Kurdish region of Syria. It's not only a Kurdish region. Most of the Assyrians are living there. The Turkomans have been mentioned. It's a multicultural region like all of Syria, actually. Of course, it has the biggest population is Kurdish, but the movement has managed to win over people from all ethnicities, from all people to live there, from all religious groups, including the Christians, into a common effort to implement this vision that Öcalan has suggested, the vision of a truly democratic model for society. And it was through this inspiration that thousands of volunteers were able to resist and defend their model of togetherness against the plague that haunts the region today, the black flagged forces of the Islamic State. So what Öcalan achieved to do was to transform the struggle for large portions of the Kurdish community into one away from the model of a national liberation, the classical model, to achieve an independent state, to new forms like the democratic autonomy that they are suggesting for Syria. It's noteworthy that they're not striving to separate the region from Syria. They say, no, the democracy that we are building up is a democracy for everybody. It should be in place in all of Syria. It's not a democracy for the northern part or for the Kurdish part, but it's something that we want everywhere, not only in Syria, of course, but also in the other countries. And yeah, by this they have been able to appeal also to a lot of people outside of the Kurds. So many of the volunteers who are fighting there are actually from all kinds of other nations. What he basically did on the theoretical level was to take their own starting point as an anti-colonialist movement. They were the ones to say Kurdistan is an internal colony, which was like a scandal, even in the leftist and revolutionary circles in Turkey, to say at the time, to say because they defined Turkey as a half colony, and they say how can a half colony of imperialism, how can a half colony have a colony in itself? So Kurdistan can't be a colony. There was a lot of discussion about this kind of words, this kind of theories. But what Öcalan did was gradually widening the view on what colonialism actually is. And the point that they have arrived today is to say, well, the biggest and first and oldest colony is women. The first group that has been colonized is not a national group, it's not some territory. The women have been colonized as a gender. He's drawing a lot from Maria Mies in this regard. So this is the most oldest and the most basic relationship of oppression, and analyzing the patriarchy in these terms, in the terms that the Kurdish movement has grown up with, like colonialism. They come to the conclusion that this fight against patriarchy has to be led on all levels. So examples have been given on what is implemented. One is, of course, the very well known the Kurdish women fighting for their rights in every way possible, including the armed struggle. Another example was the co-chairing, like co-chairs for everybody, but it's not only like the chairs, it's not only the head of parties or the head of municipalities, like on all levels, like on the local level, region level, all kinds of organizations, be trade union or political party or whatever. On all levels there's a double chair, like one man and one woman, and there are quotas for like everything, like on all levels. So it's one way of tackling the issue, but it's more than this. Like it's the fight against, you know, all kinds of violence in the family, outside of the family, against women. Women are encouraged to organize in all kinds of forms. So, and then this is encouraged by the movement as a whole and encouraged by the men. So this is the kind of consequences that come out of this analysis and the change in analysis that has happened over the decades. And Öcalan's writing on these issues was very influential for that. It was actually the spark that kindled what, you know, what became then the Kurdish women's movement, which is arguably one of the strongest women's movements in the world, and surely the strongest women's movement in the Middle East, which is remarkable and amazing in itself. It was actually, who was going to speak here was Ceylan Barya. Nick, Rosa mentioned her. She's one of the outstanding figures in the Kurdish women's movement in Turkey. She has been a political prisoner for many years herself, and she has been included recently into the group of politicians that are able, actually the only persons right now able to see Öcalan, because even his lawyers haven't seen him for 4 years. Yes, for 4 years, since July 2011, he has not had the possibility to have access to his lawyers, neither in written or oral form or anything. He hasn't seen his lawyers for 4 years. But it's been a while now that politicians have been allowed to go there to kind of be intermediaries in the talks that Öcalan has been with the government. It's actually tripartite talks. It's the PKK on one side, it's the government on the other side, and Öcalan on the island. So she has been, although she's not a member of parliament, she has been included into that group onto the specific request of Öcalan. He said this is not just a thing of political party and MPs, the women's movement must be in this. So even in this, I wouldn't call it a peace process, it's talks right now. But even in this, from the earliest possible stage on, Öcalan wanted the women's movement, the organized women represented in this. Not her as a person, but the movement represented there. So I'm very sorry that this didn't work out, that Ceylan couldn't come, and so I'm the sorry replacement for her. So when we are running this campaign as the international initiative Freedom for Abdullah Öcalan, Peace in Kurdistan, this is not about only an individual. It's not only about Öcalan as a person. It's very crucial for the solution of the issue as a whole. He is important as an inspiration for millions of people who have, you know, heard about his theories, have been inspired by that, people who have read his books. He is a skilled politician. He has been able to remain influential for decades now, while others, you know, including many dictators or elected governments, have come and gone. So he has the skills to actually lead such negotiations if they should start, I hope soon. But there's also something he has, due to the esteem he has, due to the high regard that he's held in the Kurdish community. He has actually the possibility to lead such a process. So this is why it's important, and it's not only about him as a person, but it's about getting the solution process in Turkey and North Kurdistan forward. I don't want to go too much into detail about what is happening there right now. Actually, Turkey will have the possibility to discuss later. There will be probably the possibility for people to ask questions about this or other things as well. So I'm not going into further detail of that. I'm coming to the end. Is that okay? Okay, I want to say a few words, and I'm coming to the end, about that I'm especially happy about that this kind of honorary lifetime membership award is coming from a students group, because the movement, the people, the core group that founded the Kurdish movement, the liberation movement, were students. They were particularly in the Ankara University and there at the political faculty, which was very left-wing at the time. Was a group of students and later also some high school students, university students, and later also some high school students joined, including Sakine Janses, who many people know has been murdered 2 years ago in Paris by an agent of the Turkish Secret Service. She was the last living woman, founding member of the PKK, who is actually still active. And these students, they left, none of them got a degree. None of them finished their studies at the university. They all dropped out and made history otherwise. They went to Kurdistan and organized the people, and they changed the course of the history of the Kurdish people in this way. Many of them, I mentioned Sakine, but just as an example, many of them, of course, lost their lives in the struggle. A popular saying in the Kurdish movement is, we set out young and young we will succeed. The movement has renewed itself all the time through students and young people. And it has inspired so many people to take their liberation into their own hands, actually. Today, the students of Strathclyde University in Glasgow are leading the effort to recognize Abdul Öcalan's achievement, and I'm confident that many others will follow. We've heard it in 1984, the USSR was way ahead of its time in honoring Nelson Mandela, and the city of Glasgow followed, and today there is a Nelson Mandela place in the heart of the city. Who knows, maybe one day we shall all meet in Glasgow again to celebrate Öcalan's freedom on an Abdullah Öcalan place. Thank you very much.